I think I'm good enough.
Good enough. Good evening, and I'm Gloria, and this is Open Minds Live Chat Show. And you just caught me and Preston giggling away about. Anyway, it doesn't matter what we were giggling about. Thank you. Tonight, Preston's returning to Open Minds, and we have a special tonight because Preston is going to share from his numerous books some of the case studies of UFO contact and the paranormal. And he will relay them from the words of the experiencer. So it's in their words. And before we go anywhere else, he has a YouTube channel. We'll get to that, but I've got to plug this. In the week, I spent a whole day watching nearly every single one. I was just blown away. I didn't even pick up my phone. So you really need to go to his YouTube channel as well. So Preston, welcome back to Open Minds.
Thank you, Gloria. It's always a pleasure.
Right. So we are just going to kick off because there are hundreds of these, but we won't be able to cover them all. Preston, first of all, could you give us a sort of introduction as how you came about to write this, to collect these case studies, which I think are really important? How did it all start with just the case studies I'm talking about?
Yeah, I was dragged into this field kicking and screaming unwillfully. I did not like the UFO subject. I thought it was ridiculous. I just didn't believe in it. Plain and simply, I thought people were lying, hoaxing, hallucinating, misperceiving. Had no idea that, I had a brother who'd seen UFOs, 2 sister-in-laws, 3 friends, 3 coworkers. So that all was very shocking. It happened in 1986, November 17. Heard about a sighting in Alaska on the news and thought that poor crazy pilot does not know what he's talking about. He thinks he saw a UFO. What an idiot. That's what I thought. And he's not an idiot. He's a pilot. And it was a great case. Multiple witnesses. It's on radar. They watched it it followed their plane for nearly an hour. So it was a great case, and it just had enough information in it to sort of pierce through my armor of skepticism and ask my brother Mark what he saw. Because I remember he had come running in the house one day. I saw a UFO. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Go away. So, yeah, it all came tumbling down for me in 1986. And after finding out I had so many people I loved and trusted who had seen UFOs and other paranormal phenomena, it hit me real hard, like a ton of bricks. I was not happy. I was going to disprove this to them. Checked out books on the subject, found out, oh, wow, these books are saying UFOs are real. They were very compelling, very convincing, but it wasn't enough for me. I needed to, talk to people myself. I wanted to see UFOs myself, so I started interviewing people, and I just got deeper and deeper into it. And hearing these people's stories, these firsthand stories, really became the thing that I started to really focus on. Because I thought, here we have people who have the most information about this subject. There's a lot of speculation. There's all different aspects of this subject you can study. UFO propulsion, UFO crashes, documents from government, landing trace cases. There's just a million different things you can study. But those first-hand cases, wow, those to me are the most interesting.
I think I would like to say, because I'm a contactee myself, I think they're the most important. And I've always said, in the past, people said, oh, what happened to you? You went on the craft, you were taken, this was done. And I said, it's never been about that. It was about why. What shifted in me as well? How did my consciousness shift? What was that about? What is the benefit to me? And so for me, I wasn't never interested in talking about the nuts and bolts of, the propulsion or what was it made of. I had to remark a few times, obviously, but no one ever seemed to, until recent years, no one seemed to really want to know about the contact experience. Now, as I said, that day last week, I've had many contact experiences. I've had them on the shows. However, I just sat there all day and listened to ones I'd never heard before, ones that I had experienced. Wow, even as it's my truth, a believer, I feel like, wow, someone else. So I think what you've accumulated together, the cases are so important, not just to expand other people's minds and consciousness, but for the contactees, like myself. It's really important that I suppose we don't need validation, but the more that comes out, it sort of becomes normalized. Does that make sense? It's now more normalized. Say, hey, I'm a contactee in public without getting locked up in the loony bin, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, that's really one of the main reasons I do this research, is because it's pretty clear to me that this is far more common than the general public realizes.
Yes.
It's not, rare as people think. It really isn't. And I heard a quote from very early on from J. Allen Hynek, the UFO pioneer from Project Blue Book, astronomical consultant, who said 1 in 40 people have had an onboard experience. And I thought, no way. I know 40 people. That means I would know someone who's been taken on board. And that's what really got me to ask everybody I knew. And I didn't have to ask 40 people. And I think it may even be more common than that. So
I think so.
Yeah, very important. And I think people do benefit a lot from finding out that they are not alone.
Yes, exactly. Because understanding the contact experience from a personal perspective is it's really difficult per se, because you're not quite sure. You have an awareness, but when you hear others speak of very similar, and what did they you could say get out of it or become aware of from it, and then it resonates with yours. Well, because sometimes I am the biggest skeptic now. No, that's not. No, you'll keep doing that. But when you hear another contactee say, well, actually, like for an example, I know way back in the day, I'd get a lot of the visions of possibilities of how this experience, the world could end or not. It was a free will. It was a choice. And I got lots and lots. And at that point, having no contact or not even realizing I had contact per se, they were like, well, I'm getting precognitions. Oh, my God, is this going to happen? And I didn't understand at that point that I was just being shown we are responsible. If you don't take care, this is a possible outcome. This is what could happen. You need to manage the earth better, blah, 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 blah. Nowadays, those that are having these experiences there, because of the likes of the work that you've done, are aware, well, no, I'm not having a precognition, which is an awful thing to have, because I've had them and they have other things have come true because it's out of your control. But this actually, they now know, oh, it's in my control. Does that make sense to you, Preston? I can shift something. And I think this is why your work is so important. And do you want to start with some case studies? Shall we go?
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about these experiences is truly how they affect people.
Yeah.
The story itself is fascinating.
Yeah.
But really, people are absolutely transformed.
Absolutely.
And that's a very strong theme with pretty much every single person I've talked to who's had these amazing cases. And I know one you wanted to discuss is one of my favorite cases, which is saying quite a bit because, there's hundreds.
Yes.
But one involves this lady from Nebraska who's, married, a parent to 3 children, a housewife, and really contacted me because her experience was so unusual. She wanted to know, have I ever had a report of this ET like the one she described? And I had to tell her, no, I haven't. And I hear a lot of grays and praying mantis and
Mm-hmm.
human-looking ETs, and another category of strange humanoids, which are often unique.
Mm-hmm.
So she's had a lifetime of experiences. She does not want her real name used. I called her Jill.
Mm-hmm.
And she, I believe, originally grew up in Illinois and had an experience where, as a young girl, 5 years old, woke up and was having growing pains, right? So she went to go find her dad because he would massage her legs when they hurt. But this was the middle of the night. She runs out into the living room and realizes everyone's asleep and is about to go back into her bedroom when, lo and behold, these figures start coming through the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And she says there was first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6. And they appeared to be, get this, 3 foot tall teddy bears.
Mm-hmm.
And they came up to her and said, go to your room, and she followed them to her room. And this is when she realized that they weren't teddy bears, they were grays.
Yeah.
So I've heard many variations of what we call, screen memory.
Yeah.
Where they will dress up to sort of
Mm-hmm.
reduce the fear factor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And usually what I hear for kids especially is clowns. But
I don't know if that reduces the fear factor actually for me. But,
yeah, I think that they kind of screwed that one up a bit, thinking, kids love clowns. Well, fear of clowns is huge in society.
It's massive. Come on, you've got the best serial killers in the USA, haven't you, that dress as clowns? I mean, it's in the consciousness now. But yeah, do go on. Sorry.
I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that sort of backfired a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
But so she saw these teddy bears, and she realized they were grays. One gray walks up to her and points to the window. Her mom had put tinfoil over the windows to keep out the heat.
Yeah.
And this gray was like, why did you put tinfoils on the window? And Jill explained, it's my mom did it. Keep up. And the gray did not believe her and asked her over and over again, why? And until finally the gray's like, all right. And they set up this little black box in the center of her room. This is another thing I've heard in many cases. Mm-hmm. This mysterious black box. Don't know what it is, what it means. But this is how it all started for her. Mm-hmm. And then, events move along from around age, I think it was around 9 to 15. She was visited fairly regularly. Mm-hmm. And she really doesn't remember a lot of these at all. All she remembers is they would come weekly. And she says they gave her a signal. This is so strange, but I've heard this in other cases. Mm-hmm. These are these little details that are sort of confirmation. They told her that when you're ready for us to come, what we want you to do is take your bedspread, your blanket, roll it up and tuck it at the foot of the bed. And that will be our secret signal. So we know you're ready for us to come.
I've got to interject that mine, I've said it on the show a few times. I said it was just a habit. I don't know why. Even in where I am now, I think it was last year. And I woke up in the night and I was like a child. And I went to the loo, come back, I went, right, under the blankets, you can't get me. And under the blanket, then I'd see them, then boom, it was gone. So I so related with that because I never thought of it as a signal, but I did say on the show a few months ago, I don't know why, but I seem to know when they come, but there's a little ritual I do, and I hide under the blankets and say, you can't get me. And I'm quite happy with this game. But when I heard this case study, I went, oh my God, that's why I keep doing it every time it happens. So, yeah. I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard this before. It's very interesting. And she says it was very enjoyable. And they would come and teach her. And all this secret knowledge, which she found just fascinating and really profound. Mm-hmm. And she would always try to write it down, but then it would whoosh, leave her mind.
Yeah.
And, it stopped at some point. And they said, one of the last visits she did write down. They said, you will remember when the time is right. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where that left off. Mm-hmm. She's No, she's now in Nebraska. She's had a very close-up sighting with her best friend outside. Came right down low over this triangular craft. So clearly these are not dreams, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because people say, she's just lucid dreaming, sleep paralysis. I'm like, no. People will jump to these explanations, and they just do not fit the evidence.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And some point she was diagnosed with tuberculosis. That freaked the doctors out because they had no idea where she could have gotten this. But because of this, she had to have annual x-rays of her lungs. This will become important later. So she has, she marries, buys a house. They have a kid, 1 kid, 2 kids, then 3 kids, and everything's fine. She's not thinking about UFOs. This is sort of buried in her past. And following the birth of her 3rd child, she starts to feel quite ill. She had gained some weight, quite a bit of weight, and she was, how it began was she's vacuuming the floor, or no, let me think for a second. I think she was vacuuming the floor or changing the kid's diaper or something, and sneezed, or this object fell out of her nose, this tiny little object. She held it in her hand. It looked like this metallic spool. She's like, what the heck is that doing in my nose? And she flung it onto the carpet and then realizing, like, oh, that was, shoot. She got down on her hands and knees and searched for the thing and never found it. Thought, well, whatever. This is always happens with these darn, implants. That's what I think that probably was. So at any rate, following this, she started to feel really ill, started losing weight rapidly, went to the doctor thinking, is this diabetes? Is this hypoglycemia? It's something to do with her blood sugar, because she would, pass out after eating, or would feel very dizzy and have to, get some juice and food to stay aware. And it just got worse and worse. I mean, she was rapidly losing weight and was becoming to the point where she kept losing weight. She'd have to be hospitalized. The doctors could not diagnose it. They were just giving her vitamins, and they didn't know what to do. They said, it's not diabetes. We don't know what's going on here. And she was passing out 4 or 5 times a day. So this was quite serious. And then one evening she wakes up and she's like, oh, God, I better get some juice and, a peanut butter sandwich. She always had to have food next to her in case she felt, her symptoms coming on. And she's walking across the living room towards the kitchen, and boom, she is not in her house anymore. So this is a full-on waking experience. She's fully conscious, right? And she is not in a UFO. As she's not sure where the heck she was. She kind of thinks this was an underground base. But wherever she was huge. It was the size of a gymnasium. The ceiling was domed. There was indirect lighting. So by that I mean there's no visible, lights, but it's very brightly lit. So these are all details we hear over and over again. But here's where her story gets so strange. She said she was in a cubicle, and peering over the edge of the cubicle, there was 100 cubicles. This was a vast chamber. And she's lying on a metallic table and feeling quite disoriented and a little bit out of it. And she's trying to orient herself, and she looks across the corridor, and there's another cubicle, of course, and a gentleman lying in there wearing a young gentleman, brown hair, wearing a plaid shirt. And she says, hey, where are we? He says, I don't know. She says, what's your name? He says, my name is Cooper. What's yours? So they're just kind of trying to orient themselves and figure out what's going on. And she's talking to him when suddenly he gets a glazed look in his eyes and just falls over, like paralyzed, unconscious. And that freaks her out. And she looks down, sticks her head outside of the cubicle and looks down the corridor and gets a huge shock. She sees several figures walking towards her. But one catches her eye in particular because he is huge. She says, Preston, he was 9 feet tall. maybe 8. She thinks 9.
Mm-hmm.
And he was not human. And I'm like, what do you mean not human? She says, well, I mean, he was 9 feet tall for one thing, and he had a huge face,
Mm-hmm.
which was in general human or humanoid, but his eyes were too large.
Yeah.
His chin was massive. He had an enormous forehead. And she said he didn't have hair. He had what looked like thick straw, orange, kind of
Mm-hmm.
wheat, golden wheat colored,
Mm-hmm.
sticking straight up 3-4 inches on the top of his head.
Mm-hmm.
Not normal hair. He was dressed in a shiny black jumpsuit that was very tight fitting. So tight fitting she could see his musculature,
Yeah.
sort of outlined. And he was wearing a cape. So I'm like, wow, cape, here we go again. That doesn't turn up a lot, but it does turn up.
Mm-hmm.
So he is striding down this corridor, very, determined, and comes right towards her and into her cubicle and is looking down at her. And she's, lying on the steel doctor's table. This is how she described it. And he looks at her and says, okay, it's your turn now, Jill. So chilling words.
Yeah.
And that kind of sent her a little bit over the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And she started screaming in fear. This was quite
Mm-hmm.
traumatic for her, understandably.
Yeah.
And he's sort of pushing her down on this table, and she sees that there's a tray of surgical instruments next to her. She's like, oh my gosh, this is not good. And she thinks he took his cape and wrapped it around her body, sort of pinning her arms to the side,
Mm-hmm.
and takes these 3 silver, smallish, bell-like instruments
Mm-hmm.
and places them on her torso. And I'm like, where did he place them? She says, well, actually, one was right over my pancreas. One was over her kidneys, I think, and just in very sort of strategic locations on her body. She later tried to pinpoint these, thinking this might be important. I think it was. And she says, suddenly these instruments started pulsing out this energy, which was powerful. She could feel it, and not painful per se, but not pleasant. I mean, it was quite pronounced. And she is just so frightened. She's trying to say the Lord's Prayer, but she can't even remember it.
Oh,
so she's just freaking out, and to the point where she just passes out. She can't take this anymore. And next thing she knows, she's back in her living room. She's still standing up and hyperventilating a bit, and had just let out a scream and realizes she's in her living room. And she's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And runs up to her husband, who's dead asleep, and starts shaking him. And he won't wake up, will not wake up. And after 5 minutes of trying, she runs to her children's rooms. She's got 3 kids. One's, just an infant, but the other kids are, older, and none of them will wake up.
Mm-hmm.
So this is quite concerning for her. And she runs back to her husband and shakes him. And after about 20 minutes, he wakes up, very dazed. This is what I've heard this in many other cases. This happened to my own sister.
Mm-hmm.
Her boyfriend would not wake up,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how hard she shook. This is something they do to people.
Mm-hmm.
They will put people next to you asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So finally he wakes up. He's like, what's wrong, honey? And she's like, I had this experience. And he's just like, maybe it was a dream. She's like, no, I was awake. He was very supportive.
Mm-hmm.
God bless him, because this has caused divorces and lots of family strife. But her whole family was very supportive, very understanding, or trying to understand. And she didn't know what to make of it. But she was absolutely certain she was awake, and this guy was not human, and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
So the next day comes, and she's quite sore. that's the first thing she really noticed. Her body was really sore, especially where these instruments had been.
Mm-hmm.
And she went through the day and she was putting her little youngest child to sleep when he jumps up in his crib and points through the window where the moon was shining and says, "Mom, went to the moon on a ship last night." She says, "What?" She says, went on ship to moon, Mommy. Went on ship to moon. And that freaked her out. She got it, and she wakes up the next day and is feeling good. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't." This is when she realized she did not faint once.
Yeah.
Following this experience, and didn't faint all this day,
Mm-hmm.
or the next day, and over the next 2 weeks. Finally, her soreness went away, but she was feeling better, and her weight started to gain. She stabilized at a healthy weight. Preston, I think they cured me.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they cure me? I'm just a housewife from Nebraska. I'm like, well, what does your husband do? Because sometimes, I hear like people who have these experiences have military intelligence in their family, or perhaps they have some sort of important job. You get a lot of people who are, social workers or doctors or environmentalists or people who are doing important work. And I think he was a mechanic. So I don't know. I couldn't. And I don't know why they healed her. She was, and then she's like, have you heard of anyone who's seen any figure like this? And I had to tell her no. I do have accounts of 9, 10 foot figures, all the way up to 15 feet, all the way down to 3 foot, always humanoid. So this was an extraordinary case. And the last encounter she had that I'm aware of was just a few years later when she was taken on board again. Well, this time on board what was clearly a UFO. She said it had like weird rubber floors, reminded her of a bath mat with this weird circular pattern. And she came into a room and there were all these figures that were largely human looking, but not human. And one of them got up and took her to a room and showed her a young child who was not fully human, but not really ET, sort of half and half, a hybrid, right?
Yeah.
And they said, "This is your child." And she was overcome with love for this child and walked up to it, and the child seemed somewhat wary of her, which sort of broke her heart. And she wanted to scoop him up, and I think it was actually, and take her home. And she said, "Can I take you home?" And the child said, No, I belong here.
That's a common phenomena as well. I want to touch on, that was a beautiful case. Thank you. But the fact is, she said, I'm just a housewife. In my case, I'm just a nobody. There was an uncle that was in, I believe it or not, the Secret Service. But apart from that, a close family member, I was a nobody from nowhere and with nothing. And I did used to think, why me? I'd hear other stories, like you said, about, they're on military bases, they live near. We did live near military bases later on. We did. However, why not? Why not? And most of the time I've found from speaking with others, it's about moving forward humanity with the hybrids. And yes, it's just, you don't have to be connected to the military for this. So in her case as well, they healed her. And that's common, isn't it, Preston? That's a common phenomena in ET contact. If the experiencer gets ill, it happened to me way back. It happened to me. For some reason, we don't, maybe we're better off alive.
Yeah, it is quite common.
It's
and
common.
I think it's more common than even within the experiencer community realizes, because the ETs don't ask for insurance, or they don't bill you. They might not even tell you, and people will have an illness and suddenly recover.
Removed. It's just gone. It's just taken away. And I said, I think it is. I agree with you. It's more common than what people think it is. And I said, they don't do it to get gold medals. As you said, they don't ask for insurance, don't pay me. We don't owe them nothing. It's just, it could be, I often think about it, if, that especially, the experiences, if they're contributing to towards, the future of a human experience, the next level, whatever it's going to be. I often think, well, they're just keeping us well all the way through. It's like an exchange, you're helping us, we'll help you. I don't know. It could be all of the above, but it's very, for me, it's common.
Yeah, I think they're very interested in upgrading human genetics and,
Yes.
making sure that our species improves genetically.
Yes.
They are absolutely following genetic lines. We know this.
Yes, well, that's a definite. That's a definite. Okay, we've got to go to another one. I picked the first one. You pick the next case study.
All right. Here's one that just fascinates me, about a gentleman by the name of Don Anderson from Spanish Forks, Utah. This is such an interesting case to me. Really kind gentleman. He works as a bus driver. And as a young man, he was a single parent and was about, 22 years old with a toddler and pretty religious. He's from Utah, and woke up one evening to see a gray entering into his bedroom, kind of pulling out his toddler son. And he jumps out of bed and says, "You're not taking my son unless I'm going with you." And the gray said, "That's fine." And he's looking at this gray and has this unbelievable flash of memory just pouring into his mind. He says it was almost like a near-death experience, because suddenly he starts remembering all these incidents from his childhood of seeing these grays. He recognized this gray as a friend, as a teacher, as a guide. And the gray says, of course you can come. And so he and his son and this gray go on board a UFO. And he says it was really interesting because they pulled him through the wall, and he had a little hill. You could see this craft landed on a hill behind his house. They pulled him through this beam of light, through the wall, through the ground itself, and into this craft, which was quite large. And on board the craft, he was greeted by a human-looking woman, totally human-looking, except she was wearing this orange and brown jumpsuit. She was very kind. She smiles at him and said, "We're taking him because we need you to know a few things." And he says to her, his son runs ahead and runs down the corridor and into a room. And she's like, "Don't worry, he's fine." And he says, "Okay, can I ask you, can you heal me of this problem I have with my digestion?" He had irritable bowel syndrome. And she laughed. And he's like, "Why are you laughing? This is serious." And she says, "Don't worry, you're going to be just fine." And it turned out he was. And so she leads him down this corridor into the same doorway where his little son had gone. And he was shocked to see how large this room was, quite larger on the inside than the outside.
Yeah.
And there was this sort of central column in the room with a little catwalk going around it. And his son was playing with another little boy of the same age with this sort of light fixture type thing. Not a light fixture so much as it was just this, he doesn't know how to describe it, which is so common. People are like, "I don't know how to tell you this." Like, just use your words, do the best you can. And he said it was this sort of like a handheld shower nozzle, but it was emitting this blue sparkling light. And his son and this other kid were playing with it, and they would shine it over their heads, and they weren't, it wasn't hurting them. They were having a lot of fun, giggling and sort of fighting over it, who got to play with it next. And this lady turns to him and starts telling him that you need to know something. You need to, and shows him this image. "See this woman." And she showed him an image of an attractive woman, and she told him, this is someone you're going to meet. This will be your partner. This will be someone you will be intimate with coming up in your future. And this is why, we brought you on board. This is what you need to know. And told him other personal things about his life, which he did not want to share because they were personal to him. This is another thing I've heard from many people. People do get all kinds of warnings about, say, environmentalism and upcoming changes on Earth. They often get very personal information, private messages about the personal life. So he was just willing to share this part. And that was, in essence, the encounter. And they are pulled back into their room, into his house. And that was essentially the experience. But then, he wakes up the next day and is absolutely spiritually transformed.
Yeah.
Because he remembers, well, gosh, now I know what those weird figures were that were coming into my house when I was a little kid. Over and over again, he would see these figures coming. He thought it was like the boogeyman or something. And he'd tell his mom. They called the police. They called the doctors. And it was quite terrifying for him. And he remembered another time as a kid, he was hiking outside his home. This is not far from the Skinwalker Ranch, by the way, where he thought he was chased down the pathway by a herd of angry skunks. And now he remembers those weren't skunks at all. Those were grays. He was pulled on board a craft. It was a very he was basically invited on board. They pulled him on board. They showed him all these screens, flat screen TVs, which sort of said this craft was almost exactly like the one described by Bob Lazar at Area 51. So he's a huge believer in Bob Lazar because this craft was just like what he saw. And he said they took him out into space to a very far, far, far away. He had the impression this was far from Earth. And pulled him on board another craft. There was other children there who were being taught. He was taught about telekinesis, how to operate their equipment. He saw human-looking ETs. He saw a hybrid. So it was a quite long, drawn-out experience. And had other experiences as well. But this was really transformative to him. And it went on, and one more experience that he had, which is so cool, was he and his friends were all contactees. And they decided they wanted to see the praying mantis type. Because they had never encountered these. And so they go up into this little trailer that they had out in the mountains and did a sort of CE5 meditation type, human initiated encounters, meditation to sort of bring down UFOs. And they look up and the clouds are clearing out in the circle overhead. And there's this huge triangular craft sort of clearing out the clouds. And next thing they know, there's praying mantis running around in the fields around their campsite there. And everyone sort of separates, and they're all having their own sort of personal encounters with these praying mantis ETs. And he had one walk up right behind him. And he's like, I want to see you. And the being said, no, you're not ready. And he says, no, I'm ready. And the being said, are you sure? Are you sure you want to see? Are you sure you're ready? And he said, yes, I'm ready. And the being said, no, you're not quite ready. And at some point the ship left and everyone didn't talk. They just went straight to bed. And the next thing he knows, he's walking down this little dirt road right near the trailer and into this craft, this huge triangular craft. There's a little metallic catwalk, like a fire escape. I thought, here we go again. I've heard this before from numerous witnesses, how they described the floor as being, a metallic gray. Said it was obviously a triangular craft because there was 3 catwalks leading to the center where there's this pedestal and this round globe. And this very tall praying mantis being is leading him to this pedestal. And so this is a very friendly experience. This mantid is very intelligent, very kind, and leads him up to this pedestal and this sort of crystal ball looking thing. And he says, "What is that?" And the being tilts its head as if searching for the right word and says, "Deja vu." And he looks at it, he kind of places his hands over it, and it starts flashing scenes from his life, from his past life, even scenes from his childhood, and some scenes from his future. And then he goes to this other room, well, the being leads him to this other small chamber and puts him inside, and this beam of light comes out from the corner and starts scanning his body. Freaks him out. He's like, "What's this? What's happening?" And the being tilts its head again and is searching for the right word. This is so interesting to me. And it says, "Soap." He's like, "Oh, so this was sort of a decontamination device," right? Which Betty Andreasen talked about, this exact sort of thing, and many contactees. I've interviewed people. And then he goes into another room, and there's several people sitting around this table. There's another device in the center of the table. There's a huge sort of picture window showing a star field, and he's looking out. He says, "This was not anywhere near Earth. This was thick with stars." And he sits down, and all of a sudden a beam of light comes out of this device at the center of the table, and also out of each one of their heads, and connects them all together. And there was this weird energy sort of exchange, he said. Again, I've heard variations of this from other people. Sometimes it's no device necessarily apparent. Sometimes it's like little helmets and stuff. But this is somewhat common, where there's a sort of a communication exchange. And so after that, the being said, "Would you like to see something?" And Don says, "Sure." Takes him to what he perceived to be the top of this craft. And all of a sudden, the walls and the floor, everything is completely transparent. The ship appears to have disappeared utterly. Again, I've heard this before. And he said it was the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. Just looking at these stars everywhere around him, 360 degrees. And he could hear the tone of the universe. Says it was like a song. It was very, very deeply transformative and spiritual for him. So this was a hugely profound experience. And I'm thinking, why him? And he says, I have no idea. I'm a bus driver.
There you go.
And I'm like, okay, well, he says, well, actually, my passion is running this website called Shabala, the Path of Shabala, which means wisdom of the ancient ones. And he's super psychic, Gloria, and has all kinds of precognition, can do mediumship, past life readings.
There you go.
And so he is, like many contactees, on a mission to help wake up humanity. And just the nicest, humblest guy. And he's like, everyone seems to be interested in my experiences. But what's really important to me is the spirituality of all this.
Absolutely. No, I agree. This is what I was saying earlier on, back in the day, it was all nuts and bolts, and I just couldn't relate to it. No one wanted to know what was happening to the being and the spiritual path they was on, because the shifts are like quantum leaps, is the only way I can say it. From one extreme to another, it's like, and every time I found personally, every time there was the major contact, shift. And you don't, obviously, translating that, which you've already addressed, is I still can't translate. I try and find words to express something that's, I don't know, paradoxal, unexplainable, but the shifts and how it comes about you. And the spiritual one towards awakening is one big wake-up call. It is, and the sense of oneness, I think, comes from all contactees. The oneness within and the connection to the all. I mean, I total agreement with you. And it's never really, until recent years, that's just me, personal opinion, it's never really been delved into or really looked at in a way, you know. But I said, you know, the work that you do, and there's other great authors as well, but especially your work, you're really bringing it to the forefront, how the spiritual shift in the being is accelerated every single time there's contact. I mean, have you found with the case studies, I mean, I can only talk on my own personal stuff, that every time there was a major one, I'm an artist, so I'm creative, but I'd become creative in another area. I would create something new. It was a constant, oh, now I'm doing this, without even the desire to do so. And I think there is a thing about, you say about helping humanity, but for me, there wasn't the concept or the motivation to help. It was a natural thing. And with the psychic gifts and everything, that expanded and expanded each one. So I so resonate with your case studies, and many others are going to resonate with this as well. I mean, you've got to tell the audience, listen, did he meet the woman she said he would meet?
Yes, that's right, Don. He sure did, and it was under very unusual circumstances. I mean, she was actually from a foreign country, and so they just sort of met over the internet and really hit it off, and it was like so unlikely. And they ended up getting together. It wasn't a permanent relationship, but they were quite happy for quite some time.
Yeah, that's it.
And this is something I see. ETs will bring people together. It's an ET dating service.
It seems to be that way. Yes.
I've got, you know, in my latest book, Wondrous, there's 4 cases of this, and that's one of them.
Well, what I want to do, we got time for one more case, but before we go to another one, and we'll go into overtime, I don't have an issue with that. Do you have any of your books there? Just hold them up, because guys, if you're watching it live, or you watch it on the replay, if you're really fascinated by these case studies, it's real. These are the books.
Here's one called Wondrous. This is a pre-publication copy, but this is what it looks like. This is my latest.
Yeah, Wondrous.
Here's probably one of my most popular, one of my most favorite, is On Board UFO Encounters.
Yeah.
So super excited about that.
Yeah.
And this one just touched me deeply when I found out that there's such a thing as schoolyard UFO encounters.
Yeah.
100 cases of UFOs coming down over schools, landing, talking to the children.
Yeah. That is, you know, everyone, so you, before we go, can they get your books on Amazon?
Yes, that's probably the best place to get them. They're on other online retailers, bookstores, if you could have one near you.
Just put Preston's name in somewhere, Preston Dennett. Just do that and you'll find him. I highly recommend you read these case studies. If anything, they'll support you if you are a contactee, or just recalling that you're a contactee, because that's another phenomenon that's happening the last 2 years. There's recall coming in. All of a sudden, there's you know, like you said, when he was they were taking his son, he said, I want to go too. He had recall memory. He remembered he was a contactee. So that's happening a lot, I'm finding. So these case studies, if you read them, you just never know. I was going to ask you something, and I've totally lost it. I've got brain fog now. I got distracted.
Well, I will say, you know, the little boy that Don's son was playing with also ended up moving into their neighborhood from a far location 6 months later, and he and his son became best friends.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So
it's a possible. You know, that did relate to me too. I have a memory of an experience. And all I can remember, I was really small. It won't go. And I was I must have been under 5 or 5. So, you know, that. And I remember seeing other children, some slightly older than me, and we were playing and we were doing telekinesis. We were doing all of these fun games. And I remember it. And then when I started the Open Mind shows and the podcast, certain people would come on that were contactees, yeah? And I would so resonate like I knew them, but I never dare say anything to any of them. And I thought, and I do think, I wonder if, because they had memories of being a small child, playing, doing psychometry and moving things and, with the screens and everything like that. And, it's just, I wonder if one day I will have full memory of one of them, but more likely I talk to them on a regular basis. Like, it does happen, doesn't it, Preston? It does happen.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, it's far more common than people realize. And a lot of people don't talk about it. They don't tell their spouse.
I've just remembered. Sorry, I remembered what I was going to ask you before we go to the next case. You were saying about the UFO in the schoolyards. Yeah, not many people know. And that is so true. Most people only think there was the one big one was with John Mack. You remember he went and filmed for children in South Africa. And they think that's it, one off. But it's not, is it? There's a hell of a lot more than that.
Oh, yeah. There was, of course, the case in Westall High School, Melbourne, Australia.
Yeah.
Broadhaven Elementary School in Wales. The Crestview Elementary School in Opelika, Florida.
Yeah.
Hillsdale College, Hillsdale, Michigan. I've got over 100 cases, and it's approaching 150, 200 now. It is worldwide. Cases across South America. Mm-hmm. Cases in Canada. Cases all across the UK, across Europe, Russia, China.
Yeah,
everywhere.
Exactly. And they're not just like an individual, personal contact like myself. These are group experiences. And I know from the John Mack one, when I watched all that and I read that, and they all of the children that went through that experience all shifted, all wanted to do something in the world, all wanted to change humanity, had the precognitions. Here's your choice. But if anyone needs validation, there's your validation. And I think some teachers have come out and said, yeah, we witnessed it too in some cases.
Yeah, and over half. It's not just the kids. And these are mass sightings. Yeah. It's really very... I scoured the UFO literature looking for cases that are at all similar. Mm-hmm. These are the average number of sightings is 20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, up to 400.
Yes.
And I did find another similar category, which is so bizarre, but absolutely true, is UFOs at drive-in theaters.
Really?
Yes. I ended up writing a book about that. And this is largely an American phenomena, but I do have cases in Canada and Australia.
You have drive-in theaters over there. We don't have them here in the UK, so that's why I think you're gonna, it's going to happen.
But 100 cases.
Bloody hell.
Where they're very, very low, long-lasting, putting on displays, and viewed by an average audience of over 100 people.
Yeah. And still the debunkers tried to debunk, but hey-ho. But what we're going to do, we're going to go to another case. Again, you can select another one. I know you love them all. No pressure. Come on. Something different. Give us a different type of experience.
Okay, here's a case which is fascinating because this seems like a simple sighting, but a lot of sightings have deeper levels of contact. Mm-hmm. And this comes from a lady named Debbie. Mm-hmm. And she, as a little girl, 5 years old, woke up and there was a flying saucer, classic flying saucer outside her bedroom window. Mm-hmm. And she became immediately overcome with longing and love and connection to, and she, even as a little girl, she knew this was not from Earth. Mm-hmm. She just got that sort of message. And she says, take me with you. I don't belong here. And they said, no, you have to stay here. They responded in some way. Mm-hmm. She's not sure if they flashed their lights or, spoke telepathically with her or, made some movements. She can't quite remember. But this was a very profound sighting for her that she told nobody about. None of her siblings, none of her parents. She did not want it polluted by anyone's skepticism. And she kept it secret. And I believe they said, we will be back. And as a high school student, she was in her home. This is in Oregon. And her mom worked at the local college in the evening. And she would often help out and walk to and from the college, which was, just a few blocks away. And she was doing that one evening as a teenager when suddenly this craft drops down over her head and she recognizes it. These are her friends. And it's got a bunch of lights and they're flashing at her. And she says, I don't know what she's talking to them. I don't know what you are, but I know who you are. I recognize you. Hello, my name's Debbie. And I mean you no harm, and so forth. And she got a very clear message back from them, which was, hello, we know who you are. Or what did they say? Hello, you are our sister. And we love you. And we will come back to see you. It was just, she got a very distinct impression that these were human-looking ETs, 6 or 7 of them, very nice-looking people. And it was just a very quick, comforting, wonderful telepathic encounter where they came down to say hi, which is something they do. It's the strangest thing. It's like there's no nefarious motive. It's just like, hello, how are you doing?
Yeah,
we're here. Here's a gentle reminder that they said, we are watching over you. We will be back. And off they went. And she says, at this point, something really remarkable happened to her. She had always been very sensitive in terms of, psychic awareness. But it just quadrupled. She started having all these clairvoyance, doing healing, could see auras. And it became so prominent. She realized, well, this is my life path. And that's what she does now. She has a clientele of people she works with doing healings and past life readings and auric readings and chakra adjustments and all of these sort of things, which is, again, this pattern we see over and over again.
Common. It is so, obviously, myself and others, it is so common. And, and this is when, I spoke to you before we went on camera, and I said, the interest I've had in conversations and some on my show recently as well, and in the groups that I run, is like, when you have a ET contact, if you're not already one of these weird children like I was, psychic, these gifts come in. Now, you got to look. We used to put ET in one box and spirit world in another box. That's how that's the way we did it. But when you start really deconstructing the actual experience by talking to contactees, they say, well, I start seeing dead people. I mustn't call them dead. They don't like that. I start seeing spirit, or I start hearing, or I can heal people, or I'm massaging, or I just have a knowing what to do, and I've never been trained before. So the contact experience of ET, whatever that's about, opens up the individual to see spirit. So why would ET do that? Why would ET introduce us to spirit? So I'm not asking you to answer that. I'm saying, but this is discussions I'm having lately, because to me now it's one umbrella. And it was suggested, I raised this on the show last night, my ghost show. One of the ladies in my group, she posed this profound question. And she said, well, because I'd said we say we're spiritual beings having this human experience, but I said I want you to say, well, what is that spiritual being? We know we're one source consciousness. Apart from that, but whilst we're in the 3D reality, who was it that said, okay, I'm going to go and play the human being and experience, and then wake up? And she said, is it possible it's ET? And then ET comes in, of whatever dimensional being, you could be an angel, you could be an Arcturian, whatever, comes in, has the human experience, to have the human experience. But the process of it is, when it's concluded, is that when the avatar passes, the ET then experiences being in the spirit world. Yeah. Because I'm hearing from mediums now, spirits are coming in and saying, I'm going to go and play, I want to play the role of a mantis next time. This has been happening in mediumship. Can you believe? There's a connection somehow. How does that resonate with you, or is it off the charts for you?
No, it's right on. I think a lot of contactees are told, you were us in a past life.
Yes.
And for that matter, the term extraterrestrial is a bit of a misnomer.
Yeah.
And it's very anthropocentric and somewhat self-centered, because the truth is, what we're doing is we're saying, there's human and there's extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
It's not what's going on here.
No.
We are extraterrestrials to every other human out there that's beyond Earth.
Yes.
So there is no such thing as extraterrestrial in terms of dividing us and them.
I agree.
The message almost all contactees get at some point is, you are us, we are you, we are one. We are all together. And
I've been told, through, when you go through the process and the decades I've been going through it, and I know who I am via the source, through self inquiry. I know that part of it, but for the human experience, and they they said, you're us. You're us having the experience. That's why we watch over you. That's why we're always with you. You've come in to experience it. And so we're around you, and we're, going, hey, you're a hero. Everyone's a hero that goes through this. Sort of not a hero. I'm trying to describe something that there are no words to describe. And when I thought about it, it was just as joyous as the thought, well, I'm one of the gods as well, so it doesn't make no difference what you know what I mean. We are the gods anyway. So, and that at the moment seems to be the transition now, especially because what ET does, if you were not a medium before, you certainly are going to be one after you've had major contact. It's like boom, boom, because ET is a medium. If you want to use a label, it's a medium.
Yeah, well, we're all entities, and we talk about like supernatural abilities or psychic abilities. They're human abilities. Every human on Earth can go out of body, has past lives.
Well, they do it every night, Preston. When you go to sleep, where do you go when you go to sleep? You go out of body. But I always say, no, we go out when we're sleeping. We're in the right state. And when we go out of body, we wake up here. That's what I say. Flip it. It's the other way around.
Yeah,
we naturally out of body. Naturally go out of body.
It's not astral projection. It's returning to our true selves.
Yes.
And life on Earth is the projection. We are physically projecting.
Yeah. I so agree with you. And people said, what do you mean we asked you to project here to have this success? I said, yeah. Because we spend most of this human experience in what we call the sleep state consciousness, which is a natural, because we're dreaming. Please don't shoot me yet. It's an analogy of the dream. So a human being, if you want to say about the human experience, it spends the majority of its existence in this 3D world in a sleeping state. Where is it for 3/4 of it? It's where it should be. And it astral protects in. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? I mean, the ET contacts, when they come through, they're opening up the psychic gift within the individual being, and they all become mediums. And then they see the spirit, and then it's progressed. Now, I mean, I see ET and spirit together, and many others are getting it too. And it's coming in, and you think, well, where is this going? And where do you think it's going with these case studies and these experiences? and what we've just spoke about it, with, you know, we are them, they are us, and all that. Where do you think we're going with this, Preston?
I think we have a pretty good handle on this, actually, and this is true for people who, you know, feel like this experience is positive for them or even negative. You know, I've talked to a lot of people who are like, I did not like these experiences.
No.
And I'm like, have you had any psychic experiences? Oh yeah, I go out of body nightly. Or, you know, I'm like, oh, do you think that's attributable to your experience? I'm like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I still feel violated. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, that's understandable. I get it.
Yeah.
But what I think the end game of all this is just simply raising our awareness, evolving us into who we truly are as complete, awake, enlightened,
Yeah.
reaching our full potential as entities, as human beings who do have the ability to of telepathy.
Oh God, yes.
Like if that alone is sort of the universal language among ETs.
Yeah.
And if we ourselves as human beings on Earth can reach that level, well, goodbye corruption, goodbye greed, goodbye cover-up, goodbye unequal distribution of wealth, goodbye racism.
Yeah,
goodbye,
and goodbye to my children who try to do things and things. Well, I always knew because I was psychic what they're up to. But yeah, can you imagine in an existence like that? This is the civilization. They're experiencing their experience in the civilization of oneness with the telepathic. I mean, telepathic doesn't even describe it. I mean, it's like you are, for example, how can I, for anyone that wants to, if we can expand on that, I ask, as I'm asking something, the answer's in already. Does that, I don't even finish the sentence. I've got this little, and I got it. That's, to me, the only way I can describe telepathy. You don't even finish the sentence.
It's all encompassing.
Yeah.
And this is how ETs communicate with people and with each other.
Yeah.
It is, there's no lying. It's not possible.
No, you can't lie. Not even a white lie, Preston.
Which is awesome. I mean, people may feel like that's a little bit uncomfortable, but privacy is an illusion anyway.
Yeah,
this becomes really clear if you have out-of-body experiences.
Yeah.
Spirits are watching us all the time. ETs.
I keep saying, you know, I was been saying recently in the groups, I said, right, you know, they're here right next. Just because I see them and you don't doesn't mean it's not here, but you will see them. The more that you're waking, you will. And what do you mean they're here? And I say, you know, like you walk into a shopping center, and in America you call it a shopping mall. You got all these beings just doing their stuff, chatting away. That's what it's like for the likes of me. They're just going on. I don't need to chat with every mother fudger that walks past to me. It's a natural, innate thing. They're always here, and same with what we call ET. They're just everywhere. They're just all in the same space. And it just depends on your perception, and you can call it awakening, you know, or remembering, a bit of amnesia. Remembering who you are, then you start to connect and you start to perceive, which can jolt through people, I must say, and be scary.
Yeah. So that's what they're trying to do, wake us up to the fact that we're immortal beings.
Yes, we are the gods, I'll have you know.
Yeah, with the unlimited abilities of all entities.
Yes,
and once we can wake up to who we are, we'll realize, of course, that we are not alone and have never been alone.
Never.
And we'll be welcomed into this sort of galactic community, so to speak, because we are all one.
I agree. And the fact is, for my truth is, I happen to choose to come in on this one lifetime experience. I can laugh about it now, but I tell you, going through it wasn't too much fun. I do need my Oscars for my performance I've done here, but it's like, you know, I was the best victim ever. No one played a victim like I played a victim. I'm telling you, I had the best temper tantrums as an adult as well. So, you know, but what also happens, do you find this is just my truth, but just with all your case studies is you have a knowing, you know, like we've been taught things, and the normal human way is to, you know, think about it, break it down or whatever. But it just flips it and you go, that's not true. That's not real. You just know. And it's a complete opposite. It's like there's not even any effort to know your truth. Does that make sense to you in any way at all?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of people are like, oh, we need to learn, we need to evolve. The fact is, we already are evolved. This is more of a process of remembering and connecting and just sort of waking up.
We will.
We already are immortal. We already are enlightened. We already are an indivisible part of this universe. Every single one of us is a part of this universe.
There's no one's excluded, guys. Even the negative Nellies. It's like Muji Baba. I loved it when he was telling the story years ago of Papa G. That comes from self-inquiry, from the awakening. And he went to Papa G and he said, I want to wake up, and he was going on and he wrote this letter, and Papa G said, you need to vanish, just vanish. And he felt this rage. What do you mean he went off, what do you mean I need to vanish? And he was talking about the idea who you think you are, which is a human. You need to vanish, you need to vanish. And the reason I'm raising this is many contactees, their identity, their ego self, or the identity, the mask of hide and seek vanishes. And it moves, it gets out the way for a period of time for the being to come through, which is, I will say, we are the gods. No difference to us and the angels, or whatever name you want to give these. And then the mask goes back on slightly again, and then it comes off. And, this is a process of, it's like you've played a game on a PlayStation. I'm not belittling it, but you're playing a game and you're getting to the end and you have to do this and do that and get shot and get more and get up. And then one day you go, oh shit, I'm this being. I am that. And I also think one thing that your case studies show and contactee does is most contactees that I'm aware of, like myself, come from extremely abusive childhoods. So we have a devaluing something. There's something about that as well. And when you go through the process of getting out of the way and waking up, you start to value your beingness over everything. And by valuing your beingness, a deeper awakening, a memory occurs. And at that point, you value another, that you recognize, Preston, I'm just like looking in a mirror, looking at you. There's no difference, no matter what you do.
I honestly think, speaking of, abusive childhoods, that it's far more common than people realize.
Yes.
And I've talked to many people who've had encounters which had wonderful childhoods. So it's because people have said, oh, this is, just a reflection of child abuse. I'm like, no, I don't think so. It does turn up quite a bit. And I think the reason is because these are people who've chosen to come down into a situation where they can help, and help others and sort of stop the cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. I went into child protection, my career. I went into facilitating groups on domestic violence, serious crime. I went into criminology. All of that I would not have done to break the cycle. And then I started to work on children who will experience it from the parents to break the cycle. You're quite right. It doesn't make me any better than anyone else, but I do resonate. We came in, we needed the tools to do the job, basically. You need the tools.
Humanity has at some point lost touch with their eternal selves. So this is the big mission why ETs are coming down in such large numbers and trying to help us out before we destroy ourselves, because this keeps happening. It's very difficult to live in the third dimension because there's a separation danger. And this is what this is their great effort. And this is why I think what we'll see is the great awakening of humanity and the end of the cover-up and open official contact and a whole new way of, peace on earth. That is the goal. Love and compassion and truth.
And people think, well, no, that's all woo-wooey. No, it's not. I mean, I spend most of my days with what I've gone through, where I'm now. I just smile. I'm just happy. If I'm not laughing to myself, I'm just happy, And even, when I played the human role and I recognize what I'm doing, I'm laughing because I now see life as a beautiful experience. Years ago, I didn't, by the way. Years ago, I was, trying to commit suicide and all the rest, as you do. And it's a process, and we're all going to get there. And I've said it many times, Preston, I believe we've already done it. It's done. And this is just the last part of the human experience. What happens next? It's a different human experience. Yeah. Imagine open contact with other civilizations. Imagine that.
Yeah, humanity is steeped in fear.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people who like, oh, my contact was traumatic, fearful, negative. This is a natural reaction because we've been trained that way. Yeah. And this is something we really need to learn how to do, is overcome fear. And if you are having encounters and you don't want them to happen and they're fearful for you, I understand. I am not saying that everyone is enjoying contact or even that all of it is, fantastic and wonderful and rainbows.
No, it's not.
Because it's very difficult. And people sometimes fear comes because it's the only way they can wake up.
Yes.
They are so buried in delusion and ignorance and fear that they are not even perceiving reality. And this is not our own fault. We're dealing with, some forces on our planet which do not have our best interests in mind.
Oh, hell yeah. And sometimes fear, you're dead on the mark there. Sometimes it will take a traumatic experience for you to face that fear, to get it. And if it has to be for that you've chosen to do, I mean, I will say we scripted our own journey. We scripted it and left the breadcrumbs and what we choose to go through the experience. But I'm in total agreement with you. I give an analogy when people say about, I've never had, I must admit, most of the time, I do know I'm on the slab, but most of the time I'm out of it. They're good like that. I can't recall, and I don't need to recall. But I give an analogy of those that say, oh, it scared me, and why would they do that? And I say, well, you be a woman and give birth. I mean, it's like bloody torture. Who could come up with that human idea? But you go through, and it's intrusive, and you've got these doctors, and it's an awful traumatic experience. But at the end of it, there's a beautiful child, so to speak. And it's not the best analogy, but it's something I give. And sometimes you have to go for operations, and things have to be done. Or go to the dentist. And there are experiences that another being is doing to you, but it's for your benefit. Well, if ET comes in my case, I was diagnosed with bladder cancer. And I can tell you, I just flipped my lid, become a victim and everything as you do. Got over myself and got out the way. And by the time all the tests and scans and everything, and then, and you're going to see this surgeon, doctor, he's going to go inside and decide what to do. He just looked at me and he knew, he said, it's gone. It's gone. And he went inside, it all gone. It just gone, disappeared. No one could say anything. And at that point, I didn't have the recognition it was ET or any interference like that. I saw it as a part of the awakening process because I was being told, whatever you believe it to be, it will be. You will experience it, but you've still got to surrender to death. It was always about death. Every so often was facing death, and it disappeared. It was all gone.
Wow.
After, I'd never told the younger children, the older ones knew. And one older daughter stayed with me, kept appointments, and it just went, Preston. And I was like, what the fuck?
Wow. Yeah, many of the people I've talked to, I'm like, was your experience positive or negative? And they said, well, negative. And I'm like, why? And generally the reason is because they experience intense fear.
Yeah.
And I think the most negative thing I hear is like being, undressed and laid out and examined. Yeah. People don't like it, understandably. And they experience intense fear. And I'm like, well, did they actually hurt you? No, I don't get that.
No.
I don't have accounts of sadism or torture or
Yeah.
intentionally scaring people.
No, humans do that. Humans do that.
Yeah, and some people do, have some, do suffer trauma, PTSD and nightmares, and it's unpleasant.
Yes, it is.
But this is not something ETs are trying to hurt you.
No.
They're trying to heal you.
Yes.
Actually, they're trying to guide you. And people who don't have a strong fear response start to realize this. And this is it can be a long journey for a lot of people.
I agree. I mean, if you don't you don't have a realization that, never mind the fact that it's ET, but they can heal you, unlike the doctors, these doctors that we have here, pharmaceutical companies. And you don't even value yourself enough. That why should you be healed? You think you don't deserve it. That's another aspect, that those that have been healed by these beings, their value of their beingness, their self-worth increases immensely. Yeah. And that in itself reflects out that they then value the being of another human being. Does that make sense to you?
Yep. Still, my heart goes out for people who go through this experience and suffer the trauma.
Yeah. I agree.
It really does. And I totally get it.
Yeah.
And, there are people I've talked to who still do not want this experience, and people who have been able to stop that by saying, you know what, I just don't want this. Go away, go away, go away. And it has worked. It doesn't always work.
It does sometimes work. Yeah. I mean, come on, Preston. I mean, I have a few memories of, I know there's procedures being done on me. But I can look back in hindsight and say, well, I'm not surprised that happened to me. I didn't enjoy that experience, but then the bladder cancer disappeared. Did I have to go through that to remove that? There you go. So it's not traumatic to me for that. Or another experience, it could be some form, I don't know what it could be that I'm experiencing in life. And it took something to wake me the fuck up. I had to go through it to get past that. And I think in most cases, you're correct. It's all about dying, the fear of death. You have to get past the fear of death. You just have to. You have to. So I do resonate with those that have had traumatic experiences. And I'm not saying it without empathy. I've had them experiences as well, but I've never perceived them as negative. Never, ever have I ever perceived. I've had uncomfortable experiences, but never negative, never fearful. Always, I know them. I know them. They're familiar. I play the game, getting under the. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and let's face it. If these guys were truly evil or wanted to take us over, they could, and they would have.
They would have done it eons ago. No one is taking this over. No. No one's taking this over. We're in charge of our reality, our timeline, and we're in charge, and we choose what experience we choose to experience. Obviously, Preston, we've chosen to experience this.
Yes.
And we're here doing this.
Kudos to everyone who's chosen life on Earth. And
yeah, I know.
It's not easy.
No, you're all on. I said the other day to somebody, you're all on a hero's journey. And one day the mask will come off and you will go, what the fuck? That was a journey. And everyone goes, yay, you did it. You did it.
I remember being like 9 years old and realizing like, what? Everybody dies? What? Who made this up? This doesn't seem right.
No, yeah. What a story. Who wrote the script? This I just say, who wrote this script? And there was I met this very learned religious man way back decades ago. And he said to me, now, Gloria, you chose to come here before I obviously awoken. And you chose to come here and have this. I went, I did not choose to come here and experience blah, 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 blah. And I was just saying, I was a victim back in the day, really good one. And I said, whoever signed my name was fucking fraud and they need to be arrested. Because who would want to come here? I was going, at that point, yeah. But now I get it.
Yeah. There is no death. Death is a lie.
It is a lie. It's no such thing as death. You are all immortal beings. And I was going to say so, girls, but I better not. You know, Preston, I could talk for hours with you, hours, because it's just so light and joyous. And what I like about you is, you know, you say it as it is. I do as well. I don't mean to offend anybody. And especially if you've had what you perceive to be a negative contact experience. I've had them experiences, but I don't perceive them as negative. So my analogy is we're both experiencing contact, but we're experiencing it differently from a different perception. That's all we're doing. You may have, for example, what you perceive to be your contact experience as negative, and your family life with your parents as loving and beautiful. Well, I'm the reverse. My family life in my script was absolutely torturous, and my contact experience was absolutely beautiful. We're just experiencing the human experience in different ways from different perceptions. That's all.
Yeah, I think some people really don't like the loss of control involved with this experience, and that is something that is, I get, because people have this marching into their life, and they're like, oh, I didn't ask for this, I don't want this.
Yeah, exactly.
And perhaps on some level, you know, people have agreed to this. This is something that does come up quite a bit, but maybe it feels a little. You may have agreed to this pre-life, but once you're down here and you're like, hey, what are these things doing in my bedroom? Get out. I understand.
It's like, but I never even questioned it. I remember being in my mother's front room. I would have been a teenager. I was around about 12, 13. I can't recall. It's eons ago. And I was ironing, and I never questioned anything or feared anything. And I remember time slowing down as I was ironing. It was going slower and slower and slower. And then through my mum's disgusting, awful, whatever, back in the day, wallpaper that was just made you want to vomit. Anyway, it looks like it was on LSD when you looked at it, all these patterns and paisley. Through that come one set of big almond eyes and another three walking through my mother's wall. And I'm like, yeah, man, as if I was high on a guy or something. And then boom, no more until boom, and I'm back. Okay, and I got on with my job. I mean, I never feared any of that. So I thought, and I don't know if it's true, because I was experiencing torture and trauma, child abuse, that when they were extra gentle with me and they just sort of, you know, spaced me out, maybe, you know, just give a happy zap. I never experienced fear at all, ever. No matter what they did on the craft or going flight. I went through walls. You went through a window somehow. I just floated off. I never experienced fear anywhere. So I just experienced it differently. That's all.
Yep.
That's all it is. Have you had ET contact?
Yes, to some extent. Something I really denied for a long time. And I suspect there may have been childhood incidents. I can't really say for sure because I don't have strong memories of that. But once I started investigating this, I did have an orb. It came up to my car in 1992, July. And I had what I perceived to be missing time.
Yeah.
And that year was a big year. I must have had 4, 5, 6 sightings.
Yeah.
And sort of escalated through the years to the point where I am having alien dreams.
There's no such thing as alien dreams. It's contact.
I don't know.
It's contact.
I know.
I'm not having it. It's contact. You don't have alien dreams. It's contact. You know, in the group I run, this other group I run for experiencers that are coming in, and they say, "Oh my God, I just saw a UFO." And I said, were you aware? Was the UFO aware that you was aware that they're aware? And you know how it goes. And he went, yeah. I said, there'll be contact. There'll be close-up contact after, but you may not recall. So Preston, you know, to me, if you've experienced a UFO, a craft of some description, and you have the sense that they were showing up just for you, they've been there. You've already had the one-to-one. You may not recall. It's not beneficial for you to recall at that time. And Preston, you can't have alien dreams, for God's sake, and do the work that you do and not be a contactee. I don't remember all of it. It's been a life. It was all the time, and it hasn't stopped even up to I'm still going at my age. I'm not as fast and as much as it used to be, and I don't remember all of it, just pieces, because I don't really want to remember all of it. I know it's beneficial. I have a knowing. I like, it's just like me when I had my 6 children. I knew I had to go through a process for an outcome, so to speak, for the evolution or whatever.
Many people choose not to remember, I think, because it can disrupt your day-to-day life.
Well, I'm happy as I am.
Yeah. But I can say pretty much without reservation that if you have seen UFOs repeatedly,
yes,
if you've had a close-up sighting with a couple of hundred feet, if you're having dreams about this,
yes,
these are all signs of contact.
They're all signs of contact, and these beings can come. I mean, I see them as they are, so to speak, full blown, but they can come in orbs. They will come in orbs. They will come as sensitively as they possibly can. And it's even true. It could be the owl in the tree outside the window. Owls are seem to be a common phenomena around the greys. I've had the little greys. I thought they were dead dwarfs back in the day. And I've just seen dead people, so I thought they were little dead dwarfs. I didn't realize they were greys till later on in life. But they can come in many shapes or form. Many shapes and form. But you're right, Preston. If you've seen a craft and anything like that, or another one, Preston, is really common. I found is this light, for example, in someone's front room. It's not emitted from anything, and it's the brightest white, just a flash, and it disappears. I think is another one. Another one. It's this. I don't know how to describe it. There's nothing projecting the light. It appears, and it lights itself and then dissipates and then goes. Have you heard of that? The light.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. It just
Absolutely.
flashes, and I'm telling you, I'm sure people are going off somewhere in that astral projecting, because there's no such thing as time space. Yeah, and then and back. It's what it seems like a second is not. It's like there was a case even with me. I was 5 years old, waiting outside the school religiously. I always did as I was told, for my sister to pick me up in London. And next thing I know, I'm standing outside the same school, and it's dark, Preston. And apparently I'd been gone for hours, but it wasn't. It wasn't out. So I'm trying to show you. You may think nothing has happened. I'm trying to get you to investigate, guys. You may think nothing happened because there's not enough time, but time does not exist in their experience.
Yeah, they will pull you out of the time stream.
Yes,
and you could have days long experience and come back at the same moment.
Yes, exactly. You articulate a lot better than me. You know what? I tell you, Preston, I better close this conversation, or we'll be talking till next week. Thank you so much. And Preston's books are on Amazon, or you can get hold of Preston on Facebook, and Preston Dennett on YouTube, where he has the individual case studies of. Are they all on there? Every one of them? Are they all on there, Preston?
Oh no, I am working as hard as I can to put out as much, but it's a infinite effort.
Well, I'm an avid viewer, so just keep it up, will you please? Just for me. They're fascinating. Right. They're fascinating.
I will do my best.
Okay, just before you go, throw out the names of a couple of your books so people can look for them.
Onboard UFO Encounters, Wondrous, UFOs at the Drive-In, The Healing Power of UFOs. That's a huge book, 500 pages. Inside UFOs, Undersea UFO Base. Did I say Schoolyard Encounters?
No, say it. You said it now.
Yeah, I'm on number 28, about to put number 29 out. So,
well done. Well, whatever interests you, go onto Amazon, go and listen first onto YouTube if you want to do that first. But I highly recommend his case studies. I have thoroughly enjoyed them. It's been fantastic having you back on the show. I will have you again in the future. You'll come back and we'll do some more case studies or any new books coming out. You know what to do. And I'd like to thank everyone for watching, either live, I can see it all in the chat, or if you watch on a replay. I'm Gloria. This is Open Minds Chat Show. And my wonderful guest was Preston Dennett. Bye for now. To the next time. Bye, everybody.